you all showing up and being here for this. So I am the program coordinator at the Maple Center, but I'm also a yoga teacher. I've been practicing for over 15 years. I've been teaching for over 3 years. I also became a meditation teacher with my yoga teacher training. And then I took another certified meditation teacher course last year. I teach some mindfulness, mostly in more of a clinical setting to help people who are struggling with like anxiety and different things with their emotions. And we'll talk a little bit about that later, but just so you have a little bit of an idea of where I'm coming from. I am currently in school and I'm going to finish my degree, and I will be a licensed addictions counselor in May. So, and I hope to use a lot of this in that work. Oh, there we go. So I would just first like to ask, like, what do you think mindfulness is? So feel free to respond.
To be in the moment.
Yeah, to be in the moment.
Maybe being consciously aware of the effects you're having on other people.
Oh, I like that. Consciously aware of the effects on other people, maybe the other things around you, your environment. Any other ideas? Thoughts about it? You're not wrong, so. Right. Well, we'll go ahead and talk about what mindfulness is not. So it's not about being calm or being any particular way, really. And a lot of times I think that that's what we think. We're like, oh, they're so mindful. And it's really not about being calm. And it's not about the absence of thought. So just because we're mindful doesn't mean that our mind's not, mind's not still working. There's still thoughts that come in. It's not a religious practice. Mindfulness, it can reduce stress, but that is not what mindfulness is about. It's not specifically for stress reduction. There are some forms of therapy that use mindfulness specifically for stress reduction, but mindfulness itself is not about stress reduction. And mindfulness is not about being complacent. It doesn't mean we're not changing things or growing or moving forward. Contentment perhaps, but not complacency. And mindfulness is certainly not magic.
Then what is it?
Yeah, so what is mindfulness? So John Kabat-Zinn, he is one of the fathers of mindfulness in the Western world. And this is his definition: the awareness that emerges through the process of paying attention on purpose in the present moment, without judgment and with kindness, to the unfolding of experience from moment to moment. I once had a mindfulness teacher who used the word open-hearted in place of without judgment and with kindness. And I really liked that idea. It's just about, just exploring what's there, just with this open heart, just to notice what's going on. So it's really about this awareness that we get from being present. And I have this short little, it's actually a kid's story, but it's just such a cute little explanation. So it's just a couple minutes long, so I'm going to go ahead and play it. I used to actually have the book and I can't find it, so we're going to watch the YouTube version of it. It will work for me.
Mindful Monkey, Happy Panda. Story by Lauren Alderfer. Illustrations by Carrie Lee McLean. One late afternoon, as Monkey was walking home from a long day at school, he came across Panda sitting serenely in a thicket of bamboo. "You always seem so happy and peaceful," said Monkey. "Yes, you could say that," said Happy Panda with a little smile. "What do you do to be so happy and peaceful?" "I walk, I work, I read, I eat, I play, and I rest." "I walk, I work, I read, I eat, I play, and I rest too, but I am not so happy," said Monkey. "That seems true," said Happy Panda as he looked at Monkey. "So, Monkey, what do you think about when you do those things?" "Well," said Monkey, "when I walk, I also think about doing chores. When I do chores, I also think about reading. When I read, I also think about eating. When I eat, I also think about playing. When I play, I also think about resting. And when I rest, I also think about walking." "Ah," said Happy Panda, "your monkey mind jumps from one thing to another, always to somewhere other than here, to somewhere other than what you are doing right now." "Well, of course it does," said Monkey. "Isn't that what everyone's mind does?" "Well," said Happy Panda, "when I walk, I am just walking. When I work, I am just working. When I read, I am just reading. When I eat, I am just eating. When I play, I am just playing. And when I rest, I am just resting." "True happiness," said Happy Panda gently, "comes from bringing all your attention to whatever you are doing right now. There's no need to think about what happened yesterday. Yesterday's gone, over, done. And there's no need to worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow isn't here, but today is all around us. Bringing your mind back to this moment right here, over and over and over again, is called mindfulness." "Oh, I get it," said Monkey. "Mindful, like your mind is full of the present, full of right now. That's definitely how I want to be." And at that very moment, Monkey started to practice mindfulness. How about you? Mindful Monkey.
There we go. So I know it's definitely a bit juvenile, but very on point as far as is what mindfulness is about. And
Yeah.
a wonderful tool to share, if you have young children in your lives, maybe a way to help them, especially with the way our society is. We're also go, go, go all of the time. And learning that at a young age can be super powerful. I can figure out, I can't.
Happy Panda.
No, we're done. We listened to you once. Thank you. So there's a couple of quotes. John Kabat-Zinn, he said, "It's not about getting somewhere else, but allowing yourself to be where you already are." And Bill Watterson says, "We're so busy watching out for what's ahead of us that we don't take the time to enjoy where we are." And I think that that's probably true for a lot of us. Even in the simplest tasks, some of them are maybe boring and mundane, and we catch ourselves thinking about things. And perhaps there's reasons that we don't like doing those tasks. And maybe that's like washing the dishes or folding the laundry. And if we were to stop and just engage in what we're doing, it might not be so bad, right? So thinking about things a little differently, maybe it's just this break from thinking. And instead I'm washing my hands and I'm feeling the warm water. I'm feeling, the silkiness of the soap, or, the plate. Or you're enjoying the smell of the fresh, clean laundry, and maybe it's the warmth because they're right out of the dryer. Whatever that may be. There's little things that we can just notice as we engage in whatever it is that we're doing. So it's a quality of awareness is what mindfulness is. It's a type of attention. And it's about our relationship to our experiences, this engagement, and it brings about a different way of responding. So it helps us be perhaps less reactive, and instead we can be more responsive. And so we have this pause that's just already there for us when we're in this mindful space. Even if we think about our engagement with other people, there's sometimes where you're with someone and you're having a conversation, but your mind is elsewhere. And the time it's like, oh, can we just hurry this up? Like I have other things to do. And and then there's those times where you were engaged in this conversation, you were here in this moment with that person, and it's just the most enjoyable time. Time flies by and you're like, oh, I wish there was more of this. And there really is kind of that difference that happens if we really just engage with what's happening right here, right now. I mean, this moment's the only one we have, right? It's the only one that exists, is this one right here, right now. So the functional understanding of mindfulness, it requires cultivating and strengthening our concentration and non-judgment. So concentration is about, that focus on the present moment. And, it's normal for us to have thoughts that creep in, like that's going to happen. But the more we practice, the easier it becomes. And so when we recognize it as this is a practice of mindfulness. So maybe I'm choosing, like, I'm going to do one task a day. I'm going to be mindful. Like I'm going to brush my teeth mindfully, or I'm going to wash my hands or wash the dishes, whatever it may be. Going to be mindful for this set period of time. And we make this our practice. And that doesn't mean we're not mindful at other times, because we are. It just happens. We have moments of mindfulness, whether we're trying to practice or not. But as we consciously practice it, it becomes easier. So the other thing is the non-judgmental stance. And that can be really one of the more difficult things, because things happen and we're automatically judging it as good or bad, right? Like this is either a positive experience or it's bad and I don't want to be here and I just want to get out of this space. And that can make things a lot harder. So if we're just like, it is what it is, like this is the moment, this is what I'm experiencing. This is, instead of being like, oh, that hurts, this is bad in my body, like maybe you go in and you explore, like, what am I feeling? Like what I say this hurts, but what does that mean? And so sending our awareness into, whatever part of the body may be uncomfortable, and just noticing what you feel. Maybe changing that. It doesn't actually change your experience, but it might change your perception of the experience. So it's not about trying to make it different, but to just sink into it. So often we're very much about trying to run away from things, avoiding things that are uncomfortable. So going into it without judgment and just being aware of what that means. And sometimes that's emotion, sometimes it's physical sensation, whatever it is. I feel like I must, oh, there we go. It's just slow. It doesn't want to click when I want to click. All right. So for helpful aspects of mindfulness, it fosters awareness to counter our automatic pilot mode. It brings conscious attention to our habits. So we have these ways of being that we just automatically go on autopilot. We're not even thinking about it. Thinking about how the cows take like the same path back to the barn, right? Like no matter what, that's just the path that they take. We can go out to the field, we can see that path in the ground. They've worn the grass away. It's been there for years. And that's how we are about, daily tasks and really our reactions to certain emotions, so many things. And so when we bring this conscious attention to those patterns, when we recognize like, oh, I've been doing this, wonder if I could change that. And so bringing some awareness to that, and then maybe trying to bring some mindfulness when you notice like, oh, this is that trigger for this thing that's happening in my life. Let's be a little more mindful. How can I engage with this and be here in this moment and maybe not run away or react the way that I normally do. It also promotes coming into contact with present moment experience instead of getting stuck in the past or the future. One of my favorite quotes is from a yoga teacher named Baron Baptiste, and he says, all of life happens in the present moment. All we really have is the moment that is right here, right now in front of us. Any moment that happened in the past is a memory, and any moment that will happen in the future is a fantasy. Memories and fantasies can be very nice, but they lead us nowhere, except into the past, which no longer exists, or the future, which doesn't exist yet. The past and the future are not places. They are essentially nowhere. So you see, you are either now here or nowhere. So I've just always thought that that was very insightful and just a different way of thinking about that. And you know, it can be nice to visit the past and we reminisce about things, or you know, we're planning about the future, but so often those thoughts of the past or the future we're stressed out about how the situation happened and how it could have been different and what could I have done. And perhaps there's purpose for that in some situations, to look back at what happened and think about how maybe in the future I could change that, just so we can, you know, find some personal awareness. But as far as being, you know, the mindfulness just helps us stop being stuck in that hamster wheel of thought as we ruminate about how things could have been different. Like, oh, I just wish that I would have, but you know, that's nowhere. It's taking us nowhere. At this point, it is what it is, right? And this is where we are right here, right now. And just reminding yourself that I'm aware that is what happened, but we're here now, and I'm moving forward. I'm in this moment now. And then we also get stuck in this anxiety about what's going to happen. I mean, how many of you have been like you've had this event or someone that you had to deal with and you knew this was coming and you just had this anxiety about it. You knew that it was going to be horrible and you were frustrated and you maybe even vented about it to your friends, and you know, all of these, like you're just mad about it for hours or days or even weeks or months, and it hasn't even happened yet. And so now you're going to come into this space and you've already decided how the situation's going to be. You've already caused yourself, however long you've been, you know, anxious about this, all of this suffering over something that doesn't even exist. But we do this. And finding some mindfulness, just being able to recognize like, whoa, like I'm causing my own suffering here. This is something that's not even real. It doesn't mean it won't happen, but just save your suffering for the moment. Like allow it to be when it happens, if that's what's going to happen. But we can also allow ourselves to, you know, let go of maybe some judgment about, you know, how that situation is going to be, because so much of that is what it is. It's our judgment, and it's about the future. So we're not right here, and we're taking on this position of, I know what's going to happen. And you know, maybe you do know what's going to happen, but instead of taking that time to cause your suffering before the situation even happens, I mean, you could use it to just plan and think, well, what could I do to prepare myself? What can I do right now that'll put me in a better place to make that a better experience? So what can I do right here, right now? Because worrying about what could be certainly isn't going to help the situation at all. So some thoughts, some practice that maybe could be useful, because most of us have at least some difficult people in our lives. And another thing, it develops more choicefulness and it promotes that response flexibility. So when we come into this state of mindfulness, like I'm here and present, and instead of just reacting how I normally react, I have an option. I get to choose how I'm going to respond in this situation. I don't have to just do what I automatically want to do, like it, or just automatically fall into from this habitual pattern, from that cow path that I've created. So choicefulness, that's we all like choices, right? I mean, I'm a bit indecisive, so choices can maybe be a little bit stressful, but I think that in this situation, choicefulness is certainly a good thing. So it also improves our affect tolerance, and allows us to really handle our feelings in a better way. And so instead of becoming our feelings, perhaps we can experience our feelings. So as we allow ourselves to just pause and be in this moment and be aware of the body, be aware of the breath, be aware of my emotions instead of being my emotions, instead of just allowing them to rule my behavior. Instead, they actually, I actually just get to experience them. I'm like, oh, I'm angry. Like I am actually mad about this. And you can come to it with this, where there's this slight separation between you and the emotion instead of actually just becoming the emotion. Which, is one of those patterns, those habits, and it's easy to do. Emotions are strong, but as we practice, things get easier. So that I can attest to. I was a very angry kid, but with my yoga, breath work, and mindfulness practices, I have certainly changed my affect tolerance almost completely. So it's not that I don't get angry, because I still get angry, but I certainly act differently in those situations. It's a totally different experience for me now than it ever used to be. So there are some awesome things that mindfulness can do for you.
Hey,
And
Lindsay, sorry, real quick. There's a gray box that's over on the far side, so you can't quite read all of where it says mindfulness. Yeah, if you can minimize that, that's what we're seeing. So we can't see the full PowerPoint.
yeah,
Or just drag it off to the side a little bit. There you go. That works.
perfect. Okay. And I apologize for this screen. That background makes this really hard to read. It did not look like that when I built this. There were like 3 different screens that changed. Oh, 4 of them now, I guess. So anyway, we'll go on though. So what does the research say? So mindfulness can actually cut pain in half. So in 2011, there was a study that was published in the Journal of Neuroscience, and it said just 4 days of mindfulness meditation can cut pain perception in half, or it did cut pain perception in half from its participants compared to those who did not practice. And so it can drastically improve the quality of life for anyone who's suffering with pain. And chronic pain is something that a lot of people deal with, and we all deal with pain from time to time. So there was another study. It studied 13 meditators and a group of non-meditators to study whether mindfulness meditation would affect their perception of pain. And the results concluded that meditators had a higher pain threshold than non-meditators. And this is even after they've adjusted for just lifestyle and overall health. So mindfulness can be super powerful for dealing with pain, cutting pain in half. Like I at one point had sciatica. I spent 6 months and I couldn't walk. And so I understand the idea of having constant pain, and being able to cut it in half would have improved my life so much because it's just this constant nagging thing that you can't get away from. But this mindfulness practice is, and because it's so often what we want to do when we're in pain is we want to run away from it. So we're trying to find a way to get out of this moment, out of my awareness of what's happening. So we bring mindfulness in, and maybe we actually go in towards the pain, and we actually find some awareness of what's going on, and we begin to feel it differently. And just like with those emotions, we can almost find that separation. Like, I'm experiencing pain. I am not the pain, but I'm experiencing this pain. And instead of it overwhelming us, perhaps we can find a space where we can experience it, and then maybe even have an effect upon it with our other actions. Like, when we explore something, we learn more about it. And so maybe we can actually learn what we can do to help ourselves in that space. And of course, that's different for everyone and their own experience and what's going on. But mindfulness can certainly give us perhaps some more options. But the research says it cuts it in half. So it's a good place to start. And then it physically rebuilds our brain. So it actually changes the structure of our brain. Before and there were MRI scans they did at Harvard Medical School, and before and after the mindfulness meditation that they practiced only for about 30 minutes a day over a period of 8 weeks. They were examined for physical changes, and the research found an increase in the gray matter in the hippocampus, which is an important part of the brain for learning and memory. It also showed a reduction in the same gray matter in the amygdala. And the amygdala region is connected to anxiety and stress. So we can increase our memory and our focus and our ability to learn, and we can reduce our anxiety and stress just by practicing mindfulness 30 minutes a day. But none of those changes were observed in the control group that did not meditate. There was also a study in 2005 that showed the world's first evidence for meditation's physical impact on our brains through measuring the cortical thickness, which shows the ability to fight aging and it improves our brain's ability to change and grow, which is certainly something I think we could all benefit from. A reduction in stress and anxiety, improvement in learning and focus, memory. I am 35 and I struggle like on almost a daily basis. Like, there's a word, I know there's a word, but maybe if I practice a little bit more mindfulness, I can move beyond that. So just noticing that there are things that we can do to help improve our brain. Like, it's so cool to think that we can rebuild our brain, and that's, at any point in life, really, that these studies are talking about. It's not a certain age group. So in 2012 there was a study that discovered long-term meditators have larger amounts of girification, which is about the folding of the brain's cortex, compared to those who don't meditate. So it's about the surface area of the brain, and it enhances our neural processing. So it just makes the brain process things, helps us make decisions faster, forms memories, and focus. Mindfulness boosts our creativity and problem solving. So when we come into this space of present moment awareness, along with this non-judgmental view of the present moment, we become an impartial observer. And so we're able to gain these new insights and new perspectives. Researchers found that students who meditated for 20 minutes solved significantly more unsolved problems from their pre-test session. And then further analysis showed that maintaining an alert state during meditation resulted in more insight regarding the unsolved problems, hinting that watchfulness rather than relaxation contributes to insight. So we think of meditation as of this space where we're just relaxed, but maybe that's not always what we need. Now, certainly relaxation is wonderful for stress reduction. But if we're coming into the space where we want to boost our creativity, we want to boost our problem solving ability, we want to, boost our ability to focus, we're preparing for something where we need to perform mentally, perhaps we come into this mindful awareness. And so, anything can be meditative if we're coming to it from this place of mindfulness, if we're in the present moment and we're aware and taking judgment out of the equation. It can really improve our ability to, just be there in the moment and perform. And then mindfulness boosts compassion in the brain. I watched a study, and there was a monk that they studied, who, of course, practiced mindfulness. He was a Buddhist monk, and he practiced mindfulness daily for decades. And they did an MRI of his brain, and he did a mindfulness meditation while he was in this MRI scan. And while they did this, the part of his brain lit up in a way that they only see light up at all when people are having seizures, like at least the way the whole thing lit up inside of his brain. And it's the part of the brain that controls our ability to feel compassion and empathy. So compassion is certainly boosted by a mindfulness practice. But it was incredible to see the pictures of this guy's brain. I was unable to actually find that information where I could share it, but it was a really cool video on, it was actually on Netflix. And I think it was just called Mindfulness. So interesting study. So this here, this looks way different than I thought it did. So I apologize. Part of my screen, part of what was supposed to be on there is not showing, but that's okay. This is mindfulness-based interventions. So these would be used in like a therapy or clinical setting. So there's the mindfulness-based stress reduction, and I brought that up earlier. So there are forms of therapy that are used specifically to reduce stress, and they use mindfulness for that. And mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, so changing the patterns, and we've kind of talked about some of the ways it can do that. So there are some therapeutic adaptations, and a lot of these are used with people in that are suffering from addiction or substance abuse. Acceptance and commitment therapy, it just helps people accept reality and then and commit to that. Dialectical behavioral therapy, they use 4 different things. One of them is specifically mindfulness. Then there's emotion regulation, interpersonal and distress tolerance are all the different. There's the 4 different classes that they bring into the dialectical behavioral therapy, and they use that a lot with people who have borderline personality disorder, but also suicidal ideation. So it can be really good for people that are in crisis. Compassion focused therapy, and then EMDR is something that you very well may have seen on maybe a crime show. They usually have a light that they have someone follow, or maybe it's like a metronome or something, but it's about having like shifting from left to right, and it helps people process traumatic experiences, and so they can go back and tell you the story of what happened. But it's important to not put someone through that unless they're capable of utilizing mindfulness and being able to ground themselves and come back. So in a therapeutic setting specifically, I'm not sure if the detectives and the FBI agents on the shows use any mindfulness to bring people back to the present moment. But I do know in a clinical setting, therapists really want to make sure that any clients that they work with have a very strong ability to ground themselves using mindfulness techniques. So, but it's a really cool process. EMDR is really neat. So some mindfulness practices. So you will get a handout that has some of this information, and it does have those quotes that I talked about earlier on it, just because I'm a quote person. I love quotes. So, but the basics for a practice, you want to set aside some time. You don't need anything special to practice mindfulness other than you just make some time for it. It's like, this is what I'm doing right now. And then you just observe the present moment as it is. And, maybe you're sitting there and observing, you're focusing on your breath, or, and I'll talk about some other things a little more specifically, but just observing the moment. And we let the judgments roll by. So it doesn't mean that judgments don't exist, because they will come up. We're human, that's what happens. So we tell our brain, like, don't do that, and that's what it's gonna do, right? So we notice when judgments come up, and then we take a note, we notice it, and then we try to let it pass. And then we do it again. Maybe the same thought just keeps coming up, and we just keep trying to let it pass. And then we return to this moment. So we notice something, or maybe we notice our mind has wandered away and we're over here in the past or the future. And so we're like, oh, I'm not supposed to be there. Like, I'm being mindful right now. So I come back to this moment. And the breath can be focusing on the breath, using the breath as really this grounding tool, because it's always there, and the breath comes in and out with each moment. It can be really helpful for just keeping us in this moment, or bringing us back to this moment. So we return to observing the present moment. So I will tell you that, as our minds wander, and they will, we don't want to judge ourselves for what comes in. And instead we recognize this moment, this noticing that I've crept away from the present moment. Like, this is an opportunity to come back and practice again. So it's not a bad thing. It's not a reason to beat ourselves up, but instead it's an opportunity to come back and to start. So it's really simple. Like, the practice is really simple, but that does not mean that it's easy. So for some people, being still and being present is really, really hard. That's why we have so many people in the world that use substances, that are constantly watching the TV, or, even workaholics. Like, we're constantly doing something. We want to stay busy because I don't want to have to deal with what I'm feeling or what's going on in my life. Instead, I want to do all the things so I don't have to ever stop. And when we practice mindfulness, we're confronted with reality, with what is, and what we're feeling. So there's a lot of reasons that people are not mindful, but mindfulness has a lot of power. It can help us change things. So a simple mindfulness meditation, and this is in that handout that you're going to get. You can just sit comfortably and just notice, start by noticing what your legs are doing, and straightening your upper body. So really just giving your breath the freedom to move. And then notice, you'll notice your arms. and soften your gaze. So in a true mindfulness practice, generally when we think about meditation, we'll close our eyes. That's not comfortable for everyone. But if it is comfortable for you, you can close your eyes. However, generally in a mindfulness practice, the gaze is softened towards the earth. So the eyes, we just try to consciously soften. So releasing tension from the eyes and looking downward. And that can really just help keep you grounded in the present moment. And so we sit comfortably, we notice our legs. I really like to make sure that my feet are pressing into the floor. If I'm lying down, then I won't, press my feet into the floor, but instead I'll feel my body on the floor. Or maybe I'm in a chair, or maybe I'm sitting on the floor and my legs are crossed. So in that case, maybe I'm noticing more of my sit bones on the floor. But whatever really helps. So, and then we find that link, that space for the breath to move. We notice our arms. We soften the gaze. And then you feel your breath. So it's not about changing anything. So often we think about, like in meditation, you very well might change your breath. And in breath work, changing the breath is obviously something that happens. But for mindfulness, we just notice the breath. That doesn't mean the breath doesn't change, because the breath certainly can change, especially once you start paying attention and you're consciously breathing. It may just change naturally. But we just notice the breath as it comes in, and you just follow the breath in through the mouth or the nose. Notice where it comes into your body. Maybe you notice if it's hot or cold. A lot of times as it kind of breathe through your nose, the air feels cool. And if you exhale out your nose, the breath feels warmer. So you'll feel the difference in the temperature. And you can feel the breath as it goes through your sinuses and down your throat. You feel it into your chest, and then noticing where the breath goes. Like, is the breath shallow? Is the breath deep into my belly? Where is your breath going? And then how does it feel? Is it tight? Am I tense where the breath is? Or do I feel open and able to expand with the breath? So noticing what you feel, what sensations are there. And then again, noticing when your mind wanders, and you can come back to your breath. And even if, the breath isn't what you're focusing on for your practice, like maybe you've chosen to be mindful while you wash dishes, but to bring yourself back as you notice your mind has wandered, you're like, oh, mindfulness. And then we come back, I'm breathing. And a lot of times what I will do is I will, especially if I'm just by myself, in my mind, I will say, I am breathing in on my inhales and I am breathing out on my exhales. And I'll just repeat that for several breaths, because as we think those words or even speak those words out loud, it's much harder for the brain to wander elsewhere. We're taking the focus of the brain and we're like, I'm breathing in and I'm breathing out. And so eventually that can fade away and you're just in your breath and you're noticing the breath. But that can be a really easy and powerful mantra to use, is to bring yourself into this space. And then, when you're ready, when you're done, you gently lift your gaze, or maybe you blink your eyes open. Just whatever feels right for you there. And, as you spend your time practicing, you may find yourself feeling kinder, calmer, patient. Lots of benefits. And then 6 steps to mindfully deal with difficult emotions. So we've talked a little bit about this, I think a little bit more with pain, but so we turn towards our emotions instead of running away or trying to hide from them or distract ourselves from them. So as we turn towards the emotions, we do that with this non-judgmental attitude. So we're turning towards them with acceptance, with that open heart. Like, okay, I'm feeling something and I don't like it right now. Like, let me just like pause and like check this out. Like, what's happening? So we come into it with this open heart, this curiosity. And then once we get there, it's like, what am I really feeling? Because there's times where like, I think I'm angry and maybe I'm not really angry. Maybe I'm hurt. Maybe some, like I'm, there could be disappointment. It could be someone, said something and I want to be mad about it, but it's not like, am I actually mad or does something like, am I sad? Like what's happened? And so just noticing what you're really feeling. And then accepting that. It's like, don't try and tell yourself that oh, I don't need to feel this way, or just denying the emotion. We need to acknowledge it, notice it, recognize it. You're like, okay, I see you, anger. I feel you. And then recognizing the impermanence of your emotions. Sometimes that can be hard in the moment. Like that's the only thing that matters in the moment so often. I remember when I used to be a waitress. I waited tables. I was a server at multiple restaurants throughout my life. And, at dinner time, it's busy. Everything is crazy. And I would have to tell myself, like, I would get into the little server station. I'm putting an order into the computer. And I'm like, okay, we close at this time. So even if we're busy all night, this has to end. I don't have to feel like this all night long. It's going to end. So even when we feel overwhelmed, like noticing that with our emotions, like now there's no time clock. So our emotions don't have like a closing time. However, they do pass. And really, the sooner we acknowledge them, generally, the faster they pass. It's that running away from them is when they keep creeping up. And sometimes that creeping up happens over years and years and years because we'll hide them. And as a yoga teacher, I know my training there, we hold a lot of resentment and frustration in our hips. So in yoga, a lot of times we'll do some of the hip stretches. And I've had girls in my classes that have just completely lost it emotionally in those stretches. And it's because they're holding on to emotions, they're holding on to resentments, and they stretch into that space, and they've come into this mindful place, and they're in their bodies, and all of a sudden emotions just pour out of them. So recognizing, that they don't have to last forever, but we also, if we choose to hold on to them, the body will hold on to them. They will go somewhere. So knowing that can maybe be a helpful tool to help us realize that we can allow it to pass. We don't have to just keep it bottled up inside of us. And sometimes maybe we need a pause. Maybe we're not ready to deal with it right away, and that's okay too. But they don't have to be permanent. So recognizing the impermanence of your emotions. And for those emotions that we do hold on to, those resentments, it's not like this constant feeling that way. It's something that we hide, and then it just creeps up sometimes. And so when that happens, again, we just notice it, like, whoa, why am I feeling this? Because sometimes that happens and it's not even a situation that, I shouldn't be feeling like this. Nothing's happening, but maybe it is. Maybe it's something from the past. So what we do, we inquire and investigate, like, what triggered me? Why do I feel this way? So what's the cause of this? Like, and really why? We might notice, okay, so they said that this person said something to me, and now I feel this way. But why does that make me feel this way? And sometimes the things that trigger us are things that may not make sense logically right away until we dig a little bit deeper. So our rule book actually was created when we were like 7 years old about what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad and what's safe and what's not safe. And so we hold on to a lot of those stories for all of our lives. And, you know, if I'm living my life now with the rule book of a 7-year-old, I'm going to have some struggles, but some of those rules really do stick with us, you know, over time. So we can investigate and notice, like, why do I feel this way? And maybe we learn some other things about ourselves, and maybe we find a little more peace as we explore and investigate. And then letting go of the need to control our emotions. So that, you know I grew up with the don't cry, like, or, you know, I'll give you something to cry about attitude. And, you know, it's okay to feel emotions. So it's what I'm feeling right now, and that's what I'm going to experience. So allowing ourselves to be there in that moment and actually just process the emotion. Because when we hold on to those emotions in our bodies, that's when, you know, we have there's extra triggers that come up, that, you know, we're angry about something that happened 3 weeks ago. You know, it's not this person. Or how many times have you've been in like a busy grocery store or something, and you're just mad at the cashier, and it has nothing to do with the cashier. It has something to do with, you know, at home, or like everything got in your way today. And so you're just taking it out on the, you know, the cashier at the grocery store. But those are things that happen. So as we allow ourselves to actually go in and confront these emotions, to experience them and to investigate them, we give ourselves this opportunity to process and actually to let go of them. And mindfulness is it's really about using mindfulness towards the emotions. So just being present and being non-judgmental. Okay, more mindfulness practices. So them here, the 3-minute breathing space, we really it's just about a consciously breathing. So we're doing a mindful breath. So I'm just focusing on my breath for a set period of time. It doesn't have to be 3 minutes. It could be 1 minute, it could be 30 seconds, it could be 20 minutes. You know, you pick the time frame and then you breathe into that space. We're going to do a body scan, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's really just about becoming aware of your body and scanning either from top to bottom or bottom to top. Observing your thoughts, like actually just observing your thoughts, can be a mindful practice. There's a meditation that I really like, where you actually just visualize yourself sitting by a creek, and then you imagine, and you really visualize like all of the, you know, the pretty colors of the leaves. You figure out what time of year it is, and you see the pretty water flowing down the creek, and you notice there's leaves floating on top of the water. The leaves are floating by, and as thoughts come in, you place the thought on the leaf and watch the thought float down the river and out of your mind. And so you can just continue this. As the thoughts come in, you notice the thought, and then you place it on the leaf. It's like, okay, I see you. And you let it go by. And sometimes people will think of clouds. That can kind of work as kind of a visualization to observe your thoughts. Mindful listening. And of course, that could be, you know, maybe it's music. Maybe you're mindfully listening to the music, and you're just present and really listening to all, maybe the different, the tones, and that you hear all the different instruments and the different things going on in the song. Or maybe you're mindfully listening to someone speak, having just an authentic face-to-face conversation where you're really there, you're really present. Coming back to that idea of that engagement of the moment. Like we've all probably had a time where, you know, maybe you were at lunch with someone and you guys were having a conversation, and it was like everything around you disappeared. You were just right there. It was you and that person, and you were listening. A mindfulness bell. So this can be practiced a few different ways. The idea of a mindfulness bell. the Plum Village in the south of France, Thich Nhat Hanh's village. It's a mindfulness village, and they have mindfulness bells that go off. And I don't remember the exact time increments that they go off, but there's a mindfulness bell that goes off that you can hear all across the village, and everyone pauses and takes mindful breaths while the bell is ringing. So it's just that reminder to be mindful. The other ways that you can observe like a mindfulness bell, sometimes it really is just, it's you breathe while the bell is ringing, or it can be kind of like the mindful listening where you just listen to the bell until the bell is over. And then you come back to whatever's happening. A meta meditation, loving kindness. I'm gonna bring that in to the end of our body scan. So we'll do kind of a little combination of different things. But it's really good for cultivating compassion. And we'll talk a little bit more about why in a minute. A window observation. So the idea of looking out the window and what do you see? So typically we want to, like, oh, well, there's trees and there's grass and there's sky. And well, if we think about it a little differently, if we come to it from this mindful practice place, we can look out the window and notice the colors and the shapes and the movement. And instead of labeling things as, things that we know, like the trees or the grass, or, it's a playground, it's like, notice, what do you see? Like looking at things differently. So changing the way our mind observes things can be super powerful for just coming into that space of non-judgment and even just choicefulness. It just makes your brain think differently when you take out those daily labels that we use for things and instead find descriptive observations of what's there. Observe a flower. There's a couple ways to do that, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute as well. Candle gazing, that can be a fun thing to do. And you just watch the candle, watching the flame, and sometimes the flame is still and sometimes it moves around, but just mindfully being there and gazing at the candle in the moment. And, just recognizing as your mind drifts away and coming back and gazing at the candle. Mindful meal. So a mindful meal is a whole meal where you're going to be mindful about it. And then the raisin exercise is this mindful eating on a much smaller scale. But what we do is we look at our food and we see what our food looks like, or we look at the raisin and we see all of the crevices. We just see the texture of it, maybe the shininess, like the color. And then maybe we feel the raisin. We can touch it. Maybe we smell it. And maybe noticing that as you bring the raisin, close to your mouth, or you bring your fork full of food close to your mouth, maybe you're already salivating before it gets there. Maybe you're even thinking about this and that's happening. Just like thinking about bringing food towards your mouth, you find yourself salivating. And before we even get there, and then just noticing, like, as you put the food in your mouth, how it feels in your mouth, noticing the textures, and then taking your time, really, really just chewing your food, noticing the movement of your mouth while you eat, how that feels, and then noticing again as you swallow. Maybe you notice like muscles and different things working that you've never noticed before. Another thing that can be really powerful is as you come to partake in a mindful meal is to perhaps think of all of the hands that brought the food to you. And this is something we'll think about with the flower as well. So I'll explain a little bit more about that. The self-compassion pause, and that can really be more like what we talked about with observing our emotions. So just allowing yourself to be compassionate and open to whatever it is you're feeling. We don't always have to be happy. And maybe we want to be happy, but if we bring compassion into it, it can make things a lot easier. Just knowing it doesn't always have to be all good all the time, or just don't even bring that kind of judgment into it. I mean, things are what they are, and just allowing yourself to be compassionate and not need to judge what is. We're going to do a little bit of mindful movement, and that can be a lot of different things. And then mindful walking. So with mindful walking, we really notice every little movement. So as you walk, you'll notice your heel lift, and then the ball of your foot lift, and your toes, and then you feel the foot move forward, and you feel the whole leg extending, the knee gets long, and then you notice your foot coming back down as the weight shifts out of the other foot, and you begin the whole process on the other side, and just noticing each little tiny movement that makes up a step. So that can be a mindful walking meditation. And then there's another variation of a mindful walking meditation could be actually just walking and seeing what you see, just noticing what's there, not speaking about it, not thinking about it, just noticing what's there. So, and it's, it's not that we don't think, because we do think, but as we come into that space, that idea of a mindful walking meditation, it's like I'm noticing what's there, and I'm not letting this first thought, like what I see, what I notice, turn into this hamster wheel, this second thought, which turns into a third, and then the next thing we know, we're just like ruminating into all of these other thoughts. So allowing yourself to just be in the moment, and just noticing what you see with each step, with each I don't even think I put this on there, but the five, so the senses are really, really powerful for mindfulness, right? So we can see things, we can feel them, hear them, smell them, and taste things. So this is something that can be super great for when we're overwhelmed, and it can be super great to work with kids when kids throw fits, because kids have a tendency to do so. Sometimes adults do too. So, but we've got our 5 senses grounding exercise. So just asking, like, tell me 5 things you can see right now. What are 4 things you can feel? So, you're like looking around the room, like, okay, I see the wall and a picture and the light and the ceiling tile and the sign and the clock. 4 things you can feel. Well, I can feel my pants. I can feel the chair beneath me and this table. 3 things that you can hear. I can hear my computer running. I can hear the cars outside. And I can hear the clock ticking. And then 2 things you can smell. I can smell my lunch still, because it's still in this room. And I can smell this room is clean. This just has a clean smell. And then 1 thing you can taste, and I can probably still taste my lunch a little bit. So, but that can be a great exercise just to help calm a child or anyone down. When things are just overwhelming, instead of like, it can give us this opportunity to be in the moment when we need a little space before we go and maybe address our feelings or our emotions. Giving us that pause that we need, that space before we look at them. So the observe a flower meditation. So you can do this a few different ways. So you could go and maybe you sit outside and look at some flowers, or maybe you cut some flowers and bring them inside. And so there's 2 different ways that you can look at this. And one of them is to look at the flower. And go ahead and look at the flower. And just notice shapes and colors, textures. Just noticing everything that's there, just really focusing on that flower as it is. And then if we think about this flower, thinking about everything that came in, that helped create this flower. We think about this flower came from this plant that it's on, out of the soil, from the seed that it was planted. That seed came from another flower, from another flower, from another flower. We think about all of the rain that came into this, the nutrients in the soil, the sun, perhaps the hands that planted it. We're getting flowers from the store, we might think of, or even our food, we might think of all of the hands, all of the people who had a hand in getting that food from seed to table. All of the people. So maybe that includes delivery truck drivers and, you know, the farmers, the store that you bought it from, all of the people in between. And I just love this variation of meditation because it really does, it just builds this gratitude and compassion. If we just think about how much goes into the littlest things, that we really just take so many things for granted. And so when we come and we pause and we think about all that goes in to creating this beautiful flower or meal, it really just makes things feel just so much more nourishing, so much more connected. And maybe, you know, just seeing how that can change our perspective, how we think about things. And, you know, we do this and we notice, like, yeah, that's nice. And some of you may have done that before, but if we do this as a regular practice, it just changes how we interact with the world. I know that it has changed me. So we'll go to the next thing. So we've been sitting for a while and we're close to done, but if you're up for it, we'll do a little bit of mindful movement and a body scan. So I'm just going to stop my share. All right, so you guys can all see me. And so I'm sitting in a chair and we'll just start sitting. And so just noticing, if you sit here, your feet are on the earth. And then find your spine straight. Maybe notice the movement you have to take to get there. And if you don't want to participate, if you just want to observe, that's okay too. But if you're willing to participate, feel free to come with me. And then we'll just notice the breath. We talked about it earlier, but now let's actually do it. So noticing your breath, notice where the breath is coming in, your nose or your mouth. Follow it, notice where it goes. Does your belly rise or your chest? You feel tightness or tension or maybe openness and relaxation. There's no right or wrong way to feel. Notice what you feel. And then maybe you soften your gaze a little bit and then allow your hands to just release down by your side. So the fingers are just hanging towards the earth. Notice any changes as you do that. And then extend your fingers. So actually expand your fingers. We're going to keep them down towards the earth, but we're going to reach the fingers towards the earth. Feel the engagement that happens there. And then slowly, very, very slowly, begin to lift your arms outwards. Just reaching them out super, super slow. Feeling all of the little muscles super slow. Feeling all of the little changes as you reach out and up. Slow, slow, slow. Eventually the arms are up. If the elbows are bent, that's okay. Some of it we have different ranges of motion, and that's okay. So be where you need to be. Be kind to yourself, bring some compassion, and just notice. Feel maybe even already the arms are like, maybe they're tired already. Like this is work just reaching, right? Maybe you notice if as you've reached up, have your shoulders maybe come out of your shoulder sockets. Could you soften your shoulders back into the shoulder socket? Notice what that changes. And notice here, maybe you could engage your core a little bit. Find your core engaging and supporting. And then slowly we'll rotate the palms outward and slowly lower the hands back down. Slowly. Slowly. All the way back, just noticing all of the little muscles, the ligaments, the tendons, everything that's working together to make those motions happen. And so we notice those things when we do our mindful walking. If we're noticing the body while we're doing the mindful walk, if that's the variation, we just notice each one of those little parts of the body that are involved in making that motion happen. And so we're going to do that as we just stand up and sit down. So, we think of mindful movement as needing to be, a special practice, but it doesn't. Like it can be, mindful movement can be any movement that you want it to be. You just choose to do it mindfully. So notice like you're just sitting here, we're not standing yet. And then notice as you go to stand, maybe you're leaning. You might move your feet, find a different stance, but just noticing each little movement, making it nice and slow. Maybe you even support yourself to stand up. Go ahead, take your time, stand up and just feel your legs, your feet, everything it takes to stand up, slowly standing up. And then slowly bringing your feet about hip width distance underneath you. If they need to be a little wider, that's okay. And then feel if maybe you could lift your toes up off the earth and spread your toes and feel your big toe mound press down and feel your little toe mound press down. Feel your outer heel, the outer edge press down and even backwards, and then feel the inner heels press down. Toes are nice and spread, and we're going to slowly just softly release them to the earth. Feel the legs nice and engaged now. From there, notice if you could lift your pelvic floor. So we're engaging the bathroom muscles. Then pull your belly button towards your spine and upwards. Like you're going to pull your belly button behind the rib cage. Notice if maybe that can help you find some lift as you open the heart a little bit, and then the shoulders maybe came up with that, right? So maybe we soften the shoulders. We reach the crown of the head for the sky. And again, make those fingers nice and active, like there's roots growing through your fingers to the earth below. So just allow your arms to be by your sides, roots growing down through your fingers. There's roots growing out of your feet. And there is a string from the sacrum all the way up through your spine from the crown of your head, pulling you up towards the sky. And just notice all of the engagement in your body just as you stand here. Noticing your feet, through the ankles, into the legs, into your hips. Maybe you notice your pelvis, belly, low back, middle back, and upper back. Notice your chest, shoulders, your arms, down to your forearms, wrists, fingers. Notice your breath. Notice your breath in your chest or your belly. Where does it go? Follow that up into your neck, your throat, noticing what you feel there. Into your face. All the way to the crown of your head. And then slowly allow yourself to release. Maybe you do a little walk side to side or some hip bumps, just moving around. We've done a lot of sitting, but we're gonna just come back down. So not doing a lot of movement or anything. It's not a yoga class, so I won't put you through all of that, although I would love to do so. Yoga is one of my favorites. So now a yoga class can be mindful movement, but it's just, you know, how we come into it. Anything can be mindful. It's just choosing that. So if you are up for it, I'm going to do a little body scan with the loving kindness or metta meditation. And then we'll follow it up with a mindfulness bell for the very end of class before if you want to ask any questions. So let me come back to sharing my screen. Okay, so the loving kindness or metta meditation, I did want to talk about. So it's really almost like a prayer. And so you start with yourself. May I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be free from suffering. And this can be in your own words. It can be different words. It's just what you choose there. And you always start this by bringing this towards yourself. And then generally from yourself, you move on to someone that you care about, someone close to you. And perhaps you go to someone neutral. So maybe it's just an acquaintance, someone you met, but someone you don't really have any strong feelings toward either way. What can make this a super powerful practice is if we bring someone who's difficult to love into this, and we wish all of these things for that person. And then we offer it up to all beings. So we'll start with a body scan, and then we'll move into this metta meditation, okay? So if you are with me, go ahead and find yourself comfortable in your seat. Just get somewhere. I really like to do body scans lying down, especially before bed, but we are going to do them in a seat, and I'm going to do it a little faster than I normally do because I'm long-winded and have talked a lot today. I was worried that I wasn't going to take up enough time, but it looks like we're going to do just fine. So in any case, we'll go ahead and feel your feet on the ground. Notice your gaze towards the earth. Pressing your feet down, noticing them, feeling yourself grounded, feeling your sit bones grounded in your chair. Feel your spine long. And then take your gaze softly downward. If you're more comfortable, you can close your eyes. And notice your breath. And perhaps even repeating to yourself, I am breathing in. And I am breathing out. I am breathing in. And I am breathing out. Noticing your breath, the sensations of your breath. How does the breath feel in your body? And then bringing your awareness to the very crown of your head. Noticing anything you feel, crown of your head, noticing just your skull, maybe even your brain, any sensations happening. What are you experiencing? And then allow the awareness to come down to your forehead, your eyebrows. Maybe you notice if your brow is furrowed. Notice if there's tension. Doesn't mean you have to change it. It doesn't mean you need to change it. It's just noticing what's there. Noticing your eyes, the muscles around them, the eyelids, the eyeballs, your cheeks, your nose. Your mouth. Noticing if maybe your teeth are pressed together or your tongue is on the roof of your mouth. Maybe there's tension in your jaw. Noticing what's there. You may choose to change, but remembering that's not what the practice is about. It's not right or wrong. It just is. What are you experiencing? Bringing your awareness down into your neck. Maybe noticing tension there. Your shoulders. Down into your upper arms. What do you feel? Your elbow. Forearms. Wrists. Hands. Fingers. Then come back to noticing your breath. Maybe noticing if the mind has wandered and coming back to that I am breathing in and I am breathing out. Noticing the breath as it comes in and down the throat into the chest. Bringing your awareness to your chest. Perhaps you feel your heartbeat. You feel your lungs expand. What else do you feel? Bringing the awareness down to your ribs and your belly. Noticing what you feel. Awareness comes around to your low back, noticing maybe the muscles, the middle back, the upper back. Noticing those sensations. And then noticing the spine. From the top all the way down to the sacrum, where you notice your sit bones, your glutes, hips, pelvis. Noticing thighs, your quads, the upper thighs, and the hamstrings, the backs of your legs. Notice your knees. Any sensations you feel down into your shins and your calves, your ankles, heels, arches, tops, and bottoms of your feet, and your toes. Coming back to the sensation of your breath. Noticing the breath. And you may choose to close your eyes here and saying to yourself, may I be peaceful. May I be happy. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be free from suffering. Bringing someone close, someone you love to mind. May they be peaceful. May they be happy. May they be well. May they be safe. May they be free from suffering. And choosing either an acquaintance or someone difficult. Picking someone, bringing them to mind. May they be peaceful. May they be happy. May they be well. May they be safe. May they be free from suffering. And now to all beings throughout the universe, may all beings be peaceful. May all beings be happy. May all beings be well. May all beings be safe. May all beings be free from suffering. And just listening. And then slowly, as you're ready, blinking your eyes open or lifting your gaze. So thank you very much for joining me, for listening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to do my best to answer them.
Thank you for this experience.
It was a pleasure.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Lindsey before we're finished?
Do you offer yoga classes at the Maple Center?
We do. I generally do not teach a whole lot of them. The only one that I teach regularly is recovery yoga. And that's kind of hit or miss, and usually in a private setting. But we do have yoga classes here. On Thursday mornings, there's a chair yoga class. It's a free class from 10 to 11 a.m. You can come here to the Maple Center. It's here in the Fleschner classroom, which if you've been to any of the presentations that we've offered at the Maple Center, it'll be the same room. It's the only room we have big enough to have numerous people in. But we are still observing space requirements. So there's tape markers on the floor if you were to choose to come into the classroom. We also offer it live on Facebook. So on our Facebook page, you can actually just go to the Maple Center's Facebook page. It's at the Maple Center Nonprofit. And at 10 a.m., it's generally Devaki who teaches those classes. When she leaves the country or town, a lot of times I will substitute for her, but yeah, she teaches that class. So it is live on Facebook, and then I do try to upload them to YouTube. So if you're more comfortable using YouTube, the Maple Center has a YouTube page, and so you can find some of those recordings there. I will tell you, they've not been edited, so they're just live like they were on the live Facebook feed. So there's things just happen as they do in real life. So, but they are there. They're practices that you can access at any time as that's convenient for you. And all of the live videos are also accessible on Facebook all the time. So, so you can always check those recordings under videos on the Maple Center's Facebook page too. So.
All right. Any other questions? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think those are the only yoga classes that we're offering at this time. We may be offering a stress relief yoga class in the future. That's the plan, but the person who's supposed to teach that class had an injury and needs to heal before she's comfortable doing so. Yeah.
Okay. Nope. I completely understand that. All right. Any other questions before we're done?
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
Lindsey,
you,
said there was
everybody.
handouts. Michelle, is there handouts or?
There is a handout. So what's going to happen is, because we've got handouts and we're going to send that after the class itself.
Okay.
Okay. Once I get her video completely downloaded and edited, I'm going to actually throw that out into our Google folder for her presentation. So you're going to get a copy of her PowerPoint, you're going to get the handout, and then you also get the video, and it's all going to be in one place for you. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you,
Thank you.
Michelle.
This has been wonderful. Just
Yes, it is. Thank you, Lindsey. It was very,
Thank
very
you.
nice.
Thank you. I
Learned
have a
lot.
tendency to
Thank you.
ramble, so I
No,
apologize.
it was wonderful. You did a wonderful job. Thank you
sure
so
did.
much.
Well, thank you
you.
all. Wonderful
well,
audience.
Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we're going to let Lindsey get back to her day. And like I said, as soon as I get the video edited, I'll send out an email, and Lindsey, you'll get a copy of it as well, where everybody can get into the folder to access all the information that we've got for you. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.